The Sinclair ZX Spectrum is one of the most popular computers of all time, but it also was never sold in the United States. And that means there's a lot of Americans that have missed out on this huge library of games that were built for these machines. If you want to play them, you can always use an emulator on your computer, but a lot of us like to play on real hardware. If you want to do that, it can be a little bit difficult for two reasons. The first is power, being that most of these machines were made for the UK and Europe and South America that use different power. And then video, since NTSC sets here in the United States are slightly different than PAL TVs in the UK. They will sometimes work, but they won't always work together. So you need to be able to convert both of them. So I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to show you how you can run either a normal ZX Spectrum 48K in this case, or my preferable choice, a 128K ZX Spectrum Plus 2. The advantage of the Plus 2 is that you get 128K RAM, and you also get RGB output, which is higher quality video. And you also get a tape deck that is built into there, better keyboard, a few other things that are nice to have. Both of these will play most of the same games because the vast majority of games were made for the 48K. But there are some games that require the 128K, so that you'll need these. So let's look at what you need to actually do that. For power, you're going to need a way to either convert your original power supply that came with this machine, so it's going to be a UK power supply for 240 volts, to the US's 120 volt. And that you can do with something like this. It's a converter. On the back side, you have a plug for standard US outlet. This particular model lets you choose what the actual input voltage is. Here in the US, it's 120 to 110, and then what your output is. So you get the UK style plug with 220 volts. These run about $30 to $40, is about as cheap as they get, and they work fairly well. But it's adding some bulk to the setup. You've got this plus your original supply. Those original supplies weren't exactly efficient, and it's not a bad option. The advantage of going this direction is that if you buy other machines from the UK, like Acorn Electron, you can use those power supplies as well. The other option is to get some sort of universal power supply like this one, that's made for US outlets. And this particular model lets you adjust what voltage output you want. In this case, both these machines use 9 volt. And then they also have interchangeable plugs, so you can make sure that your plug fits your machine. So that's a good choice. These aren't the best power supplies. I'll also link to other power supplies you can buy that are higher quality, that are made specifically for these machines. So one of those options will get you power into your machine, which let you turn it on. Then you have to get video out from your machines to your presumably NTSC television here in the US. And there's a couple options for that as well. If you want to use the 48K Spectrum, normally the only video output is an RF output, which is going to put out PAL signals for an RF that you would connect to the cable or antenna output or input on your TV. But it's very easy to convert that to a composite signal. Doing so just takes cutting 2 wires and resoldering them. You just pull inside the machine, you just unscrew 5 screws, and cut 2 wires and solder one of them in place, and then you'll get composite output through here, which should work on most NTSC TVs. Technically, there is a difference between composite on PAL and composite on NTSC, but in my testing, the PAL composite output from this machine still works on my NTSC TV. A better option, though, is if you use the ZX Spectrum Plus 2, like this one. It has RGB output, which is a lot higher quality, a lot clearer signal, and I'll demonstrate with those in just a minute. If you do that, then you can get a RGB to SCART cable, S-C-A-R-T. SCART was never really took off in the US, but it was pretty popular in England. So this is a nice quality output, but you have to have a way to connect this to your TV. And that is where this little device comes in. This has a SCART input and then outputs to HDMI, and that will work on any modern TV. So this is really nice. This unit runs, I want to say, about $20. I'll link to it in the description below, but you'll get a much better quality output doing this option. You'll have to spend a little bit more money to do it, but the quality is really nice and definitely worth it. You'll see that in just a minute when I demonstrate it. So let's go ahead and do that, and I'll show you what they look like output on an NTSC TV. Alright, first I want to show you the 48K. Now I can't actually load any software or games on here right now. For whatever reason, I can't get them to reliably play from the tape decks I have or from loading from my phone. In both cases, you get errors. It's just not loud enough, which is kind of a common problem. I don't have any kind of official Sinclair tape deck to go with this, so they just don't load reliably. But I did want to show you that you can get a clear picture out of composite with the composite mod, and it looks pretty decent. And then we'll see, we'll pull out the Plus 2, and you'll be able to see loading an actual game on that. Okay, now we're switched over to the Plus 2, and hopefully you can see why this is such a good option. Through the RGB to SCART to HDMI setup through this device, we get a really nice picture quality. Colors are coming through really nicely. Plays well with modern LCD TVs, 1080p, 720p, even 4K TVs it should work well with. And you also get the compatibility. So if you notice, you have tape loader, but you also have 48K. Using the 48K version, which is what we're going to do to load Horace Goes Skiing, you should be able to play virtually every 48K game that came out. I believe there's a couple that don't quite work, and I'll explain that in just a second, but the vast majority of the entire library should work in this mode. So we'll start loading that. Using just the regular, same way you would do it on a 48K. Okay, and then while that's loading, I'll explain kind of why, or what the difference is between the different versions of the ZX Spectrum Plus 2. So there are a few different versions, and they all started after Amstrad bought out Sinclair and took over production of the ZX Spectrum. The first version is what I have here. It's usually called the Plus 2 Gray because the case is gray as opposed to later models which were black. But these are especially good for this purpose because they use the same hardware that was left over from the 48K boards, so you wouldn't have as many problems with compatibility. Later versions weren't quite as compatible. They still supposedly work pretty well. Those are the ones that are black, but they don't work perfectly, or at least not as perfectly as the gray does, from what I understand. So if you're going to get a Plus 2, the gray is your best choice. Other people prefer the aesthetics of the black version, but which also came in a couple of different types. But I don't mind the gray, and you get the best compatibility out of it. So we should have Horus loading over there, and you can see that the picture quality is nice. The compatibility works. If you've ever loaded anything off tape, you know this takes a while, so we'll kind of fast forward to when that finishes loading. Okay, and then now we've got the game loaded, so you can see that this is a regular 48K game. This is not made for the 128K plus 2. In fact, this will actually run on the 16K version of the Speccy if you have one for some reason. But yeah, so I mean, you can see that loads just fine. I don't have a gamepad plugged in, but it should. Well, you got the demo running there, but yeah. So this is my recommendation if you want to use a ZX Spectrum in the United States. Get the Plus 2 Gray. Prices are right now they're about the same as they are for a regular 48K, so you're not really having to pay more. So get the Plus 2 Gray. Get either the universal power supply or the converter, and then get one of these SCART to HDMI convert boxes. So that's my recommendation. The whole setup should be under $200, including shipping for the machine, probably from the UK, which isn't too bad to be able to play, this huge library of games you've probably not got to experience yet here in the US. So, thanks for watching.